A slave trader went about his usual business. A couple approached him. He assumed they were buying a slave, but they wanted to sell their baby. The slave trader was shocked and refused their offer. A man observed a couple seemingly abandoning their baby, questioning their parentage. A wealthy nobleman offered to buy the baby. The nobleman, revealed as a slave trader for his arena, acquired the infant. The couple readily handed over their child and departed without a backward glance. As the nobleman prepared to leave, the observer reflected on the unsettling scene, deeming the nobleman even more disturbing than the parents. A cloaked figure watches a carriage roll away, contemplating putting a newborn into an arena. This is the story of a nobleman obsessed with finding the world's strongest slave to maximize his arena profits. He hungrily imagines the fights and the money, his face twisted with greed as coins rain down. But he laments, most slaves are too weak. Disappointed, he confers with an older advisor. The narrator was dissatisfied with the quality of slaves available. Then, a powerful, imposing man caught their attention. The narrator was awestruck by the man's warrior aura. He decided this was the warrior he needed. Shockingly, the man was selling his own baby. A shocked face reacted with disbelief. A wealthy man acquired a child and threw him into the arena. He then gave instructions to his arena champion regarding the child. A muscular man was promised benefits to raise a baby. Doubts arose about the baby's survival in such a harsh environment. Against the odds, the child persevered. The baby thrived, crawling around and eating ravenously. A bald toddler, dressed in simple clothes, eagerly ate from a bowl. A muscular man, likely a warrior, observed the child with a newfound sense of affection, contemplating raising him. The child demonstrated remarkable intelligence, grasping concepts quickly, and even figuring things out independently. The warrior, bruised and weary, watched as the child played, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. A child grew relentlessly amidst a backdrop of weapons and struggle. Older now, the child's thoughts became a mystery, but in his first arena match, his true nature was revealed. Watched by a shadowy figure, the young man, now grown, stood in the arena, facing an opponent, with spectators eagerly watching. A fierce warrior, radiating an ominous aura, dominated the arena, leaving his opponent disarmed and bewildered. A witness, face streaked with sweat and eyes wide with awe, declared it the most flawless combat they'd ever seen. Reflecting, the witness realized the warrior's prowess surpassed anything they had taught him. The warrior seemed to absorb the very essence of the arena, wielding it as a weapon in his devastatingly perfect combat. A fierce battle raged in the arena. The narrator mused that the child might have been different from the start. Time moved on. Weakened and facing death in the arena, the narrator struggled. A child ran into the arena. A man celebrates his victory, only to be shocked by an unexpected escape. He realized the being he raised had become a monster. The monstrous figure looms, radiating menacing energy. The aftermath shows defeated bodies lying on the arena floor. A lonely child, abandoned and orphaned, stands amidst shadows and fire. The child, now grown into a muscular young man, sits in the dim arena, tearing at a piece of meat. Change is coming. The arena may not hold him much longer. Two figures approach him through the bars. One beckons him to follow, while another questions the nature of their surroundings. A young man asks to borrow money, intending to bet it. Chips clatter onto a gaming table as bets are placed. One concerned young man questions the location, worried it's illegal. Another assures him it's a legitimate arena, legal and above board, teasing him for being a bookworm. The concerned one remains unconvinced, fearing repercussions from their school. The confident one explains that nobles legally purchase and command slaves to fight in the arena. He urges his hesitant friend to hurry and join in, calling him a coward. A cloaked figure handed something to a man. The man walked away, his footsteps echoing. He refused an offer, declaring his academic focus. He gathered his earnings, stating his need to pay tuition. A curly-haired man expressed surprise at something offered. The first man reacted with visible confusion. A shocked young man reacted strongly to something happening on a game board. He demanded to know when another player made a move. The other player smugly dismissed him, saying it was too late. Angrily, the first man challenged the move's legitimacy. The smug player pointed to his own contribution to the pot, insisting he had a right to play. Finally, with a sly grin, he emphasized the need to see how their gamble plays out. A young man regrets his current predicament, lamenting his hard work to get into a prestigious university. He recalls his father's advice to avoid barbarism, feeling dragged down by a senior. He remembers his father's pride and unwavering belief in him. He cherishes his sister's adoration. He reflects on his hard-working mother's sacrifices. Finally, he remembers his mother's mixed emotions of apology and gratitude towards him. A man prayed anxiously for his money's safety, vowing to change his ways. He gritted his teeth, determined to sever ties with a treacherous acquaintance. Another man gave a thumbs up, urging someone to let's go. A torch blazed in a dark, caged area. Finally, a large circular arena was revealed, spikes lining its perimeter. The arena floor was dusty and barren, lit from a circular opening above. In a torch-lit arena, two figures watch from the sands. A flamboyant announcer introduces the first contestant, a former plunderer from the northern warlands, now a slave, forced to fight. The imposing bald warrior, marked with a dark scar on his head, enters the arena, carrying a large shield. He is announced as Deathbringer. A spiked club is gripped tightly, ready for brutal action. The crowd roars with excitement. A spectator with dark curly hair smirks, impressed by the fighter's ferocity. Another spectator with short dark hair looks disturbed, finding the scene even more horrific than anticipated. Blood splatters across the arena floor and the heavy, metallic scent of blood fills the air. Someone felt sick watching the brutal arena fight. Two men discuss their bets, revealing they hadn't bet on the Deathbringer. They placed their bet on Happy Face, a name that sounded weak to the other man. The announcer called the next fight, hyping up the crowd. One of the men wondered if the name Happy Face was ironic, hinting at a deceptive strength. Someone pondered Happy's mysterious past, wondering if his smile held a dark secret. A man in red agreed enthusiastically. A crowd roared with excitement, chanting, "Happy." Another man, observing the scene, felt a strange, unexplained tension in the air. He looked down, confused, then back up, startled. Happy beamed a wide, almost unnerving smile. William looked stunned, questioning something unseen. He observed a figure in a simple outfit standing in the arena, seemingly unarmed before a crowd. A close-up revealed the young, clean-shaven face of the competitor, who wore a small, almost imperceptible smile. A young man with messy hair beamed a bright, oblivious smile, starkly out of place in his grim surroundings. A shocked onlooker realized something was terribly wrong. The crowd questioned the young man's fitness for a fight, noting his lack of focus and equipment. Someone pointed towards the arena, expressing concern for the smiling, seemingly defenseless youth. Two older men watched with unease, one questioning the sanity of those sending the boy into such obvious danger. A spectator wondered aloud what the naive boy could possibly find to smile about. A nervous man sweats, questioning the strange scenario unfolding before him. A scarred man ponders if the unfolding scene is a test of lethal skill or a signal of commencement. Resigned, the scarred man decides the reason is irrelevant. A large, fierce man brutally attacks someone with a spiked club, vowing to kill everyone and escape. A spiky club swung fiercely, striking a man's face. Arrows rained down in a fiery arena, witnessed by a horrified man shielding his face. Grimacing, the same man declared, "It's over." A fallen figure struggles on the arena floor, a spiked weapon lying nearby. A dark-haired young man looks on in shocked disbelief, urged not to stand up. His expression shifts from shock to grim determination, rejecting the idea of running. He cries out in frustration, demanding a weapon rather than face unarmed death. A dark-haired man demanded a stop to something disturbing. Overcome with emotion, he turned away, unable to watch any longer. He then pointed out to a young boy named William the harsh reality of orphans living in a cage. A young boy, William, looks down at a child in a cage, protesting the injustice of the child's fate. His father explains that slaves are born into their roles, their lives predetermined. The father cups William's face, directing his attention to a majestic kingdom in the distance, declaring it their destiny. William stares intently at the kingdom, absorbing his father's words. Happy looked down, seemingly distressed. He stood alone in a large, empty arena, surrounded by spears stuck in the blood-soaked sand. Someone asked him if he was okay. Another person with curly hair questioned if his behavior was about money. Happy remained silent, troubled. A sound effect suggests someone is about to strike him. A dying man whispers to a young boy, seemingly absolving someone of blame. The boy, enraged, unleashes a furious attack. The attacker grins, his eyes filled with a chilling intensity. A horrified scream echoes as someone witnesses the brutal scene. William's eyes lock with Happy's, sharing a moment of intense emotion. A bloodied, smiling young man gripped a spiked club. A dark-haired man reacted with shock. A hand slammed onto the ground. A large, scarred man swung a spiked club with brutal force, sending someone flying. A man was violently thrown against a wooden wall. A scarred man slams his fist into someone's face. The injured man looked up in confusion and pain. A dark-haired young man gasped in shock. A smirking, curly-haired man watched with amusement. A crowd of onlookers reacted with a mixture of shock and excitement. A sharp impact echoed in the arena, followed by a hush. A young man, gripped by the thrill of the fight, stood amidst the swirling dust. The crowd erupted in cheers, their excitement palpable. Happy, energized by the roar, launched another attack, a fierce grin on his face. He struck his opponent with brutal force, the impact radiating outwards. A man with dark hair looks shocked, gripping a pole. He delivers a powerful punch to another man's face. The impact throws the other man back. He looks stunned, sweat dripping from his face as he holds the pole. He thinks about domination. With a fierce grin, a man brutally overpowers his opponent in a swift, decisive strike. The defeated man crumples to the ground, his face a mask of pain and shock. He collapses heavily, blood splattering the arena floor. Happy Face triumphs in the arena, a wide smile on his dirt-smeared face. The crowd roars his name as he walks away from his fallen opponent. He's given his winnings, looking confused at the coins in his hand. Overwhelmed with emotion, Happy Face clutches the money, realizing its potential. A single copper coin lands someone's open palms. A dark-haired man looked surprised by a piece of paper, while a crowd murmured behind him. Another man showed him the paper, explaining that betting on Happy was like getting a small tip. Even large bets yielded minimal returns because Happy's win rate was so high. The man returned the bet money, chuckling as someone ran off, presumably after seeing the odds. Someone offered William more arena matches. William, seemingly hesitant, agreed. The ensuing fights were brutal and bloody, just as he'd expected. Disgusted, William quickly left the arena, Overhearing a defeated fighter's desperate plea and another man's cruel mockery, someone asked William about going home. William returned to school and paid his tuition. Back in his dorm room, he diligently studied by candlelight. Awards for top academic performance and effort hung on the wall, William's name prominent. He focused intently on his writing, a feather pen scratching against the paper. He paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face, before returning to his work with renewed determination. By candlelight, a young man meticulously examines a document. His eyes widen slightly, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. He spots a small round object on the table near the document. He reaches out and closes a book, seemingly making a decision. A gust of wind rushes through, extinguishing the candles, plunging the room into darkness. He is left alone in the now silent, dark room. Lost in thought, a young man with dark hair awoke in bed, clutching the covers. He stared at the ceiling, haunted by a vivid red nightmare of caged bars and frantic scribbles. His eyes flashed open, filled with a terrifying pink glow, as fragmented images of smiling faces overlapped with more chaotic markings. He gasped, abruptly sitting up in his bed, his expression now one of fear and confusion as he stared at the bright window. A young man awoke, breathing heavily and confused. A rooster crowed, signaling the start of a new day. One man offered to treat his friends to a drink after school. His friends teased him, but he insisted he was serious. Suddenly, he noticed something alarming and shouted in fear. A man, seemingly distressed, is questioned about his unusual eyes. Someone else, concerned, wonders about the state of his eyes. A dark-haired man with piercing blue eyes emerges from a shadowy background, contemplating another fight. The next chapter, the final match, is announced. A rooster crows, signaling the start of a new day within the arena walls. A bandaged and bruised fighter jolts awake, startled. A concerned bearded man advises the fighter to warm up for his next match. A scarred fighter lay defeated as a young boy effortlessly broke a training dummy. Spectators discuss the boy's ability to control his strength and satisfy both master and audience without killing. A bearded man commented on how lucky the fighter was to be paired with the boy. The scarred fighter scoffed at the idea that the boy was merely adjusting his power. A bandaged man sat across from a larger bearded man. The bearded man claimed he'd only lost their fight because of a lucky kick. Infuriated, the bandaged man slammed his fist on the ground, shouting that his opponent should be dead. The bearded man calmly explained that he was simply stating facts, gesturing toward a corpse disposal bin where other bodies were being thrown. A curly-haired young man cheerfully told someone to save the fighting for the arena. A large, scarred man seemed surprised by something he witnessed. He angrily demanded silence from a group of cowering men. Another man scoffed, incredulous, that a certain pathetic guy held any power, finding him unimpressive. A scarred, bandaged man scoffed at a younger, seemingly weaker opponent. He mused that the young man was trembling from fear of him. Someone agreed, adding that the man's previous victory was just luck. Looking around at the other men in the room, the bandaged man sneered, declaring them all weaklings. He grinned, relishing the feeling of power, deciding this place was his for the taking. Suddenly, a loud, aggressive shout interrupted his thoughts. A scarred man curiously asked a young man how he ended up being sold. He wondered if it was due to slave trade, being a prisoner of war, debt, or piracy. The young man cheerfully explained that he was told his father sold him to the arena at birth. Shocked, the scarred man questioned if he had grown up in the arena. The young man brightly confirmed, adding that the arena people raised and trained him to fight. A scarred man questions a powerful, muscular youth about his training, noticing the fear in his companions. The youth corrects himself, cryptically revealing his teachers have long been dead. He throws off his robe, his scarred body radiating intense strength, leaving the questioner stunned and terrified. A muscular man lamented the lack of strong opponents. He gestures, indicating the other man is just another new face. He points at a nervous, sweating opponent, saying he's no different. The muscular man reveals he now evaluates new contestants. He explains his strategy, feigning injury to excite both the crowd and his opponent. The other man reacts with confusion. The fight replays in Happy's mind, a brutal ballet of dodged blows and near misses. Happy realizes with dawning horror that his opponent was holding back. A surge of rage and humiliation floods Happy as the truth sinks in. He was toyed with. He slams his fist down, the impact shaking the ground. A curly-haired man cheerfully urged his fellow fighters to save their energy, reminding them of their inevitable fate in the arena. Suddenly, a voice meekly called out. The cheerful fighter violently lashed out, striking his unsuspecting opponent. The impact was devastating, sending the other fighter crashing to the ground. Defeated, two scarred men sat together, seemingly unfazed by something disturbing. A hand held an arena pass for Iron Face, silver grade. A young man wondered about the name Iron Face. Another man offered his arena pass to someone, claiming he was going to the pub. A young man handed off his betting pass and money, instructing someone to place the bets precisely. He wistfully thought about seeing Happy's match one last time, worried he seemed like a gambling addict. A bustling arena. Finally, the narrative moved to a peaceful view of the gravedigger's house, nestled in a valley. An older man with a shovel calls for Sagar. He instructs Sagar to join him in collecting bodies from the Lucastian Eye arena. Sagar respectfully agrees to his master's order, Arriving at the arena with a cart, they observe the aftermath of a large event, speculating if one cart will suffice for the numerous corpses. Overlooking a battlefield strewn with bodies, two figures discuss the aftermath. A worker promises to tidy up the carnage efficiently. The older man expresses his trust in the younger worker, impressed by their reliability, despite only being hired recently. Alone with the fallen, the worker gently examines the injuries of one of the deceased, a contemplative expression dawning on their face. A masked figure examined bruises on a corpse, noting they were similar across all the bodies. The figure deduced the bruises were from bare fists, days old, not from the final fight. Confused, the figure wondered why there were so many signs of hand-to-hand combat in an arena known for weapons. A masked man called out to Cigar, pointing to something. Cigar rushed over asking what was wrong. The masked man examined a corpse, realizing it belonged to a missing royal identifiable. Despite mutilation, he explained to a shocked Cigar that the body's moles and teeth matched the missing person report. A masked man and an older man discovered a corpse in the arena, identified as a missing royal. The masked man wanted to inform the authorities. He was abruptly stopped by the older man, who feared the king's wrath. The masked man reminded him of the king's temper, implying danger either way. Two figures discussed the gullibility of someone, considering burying something quietly. A grim-faced man stared intensely, seemingly lost in thought. He addressed someone as master, declaring criminals must be punished, even at the cost of his own life. To uphold justice, he turned and walked away, vowing to return. An older man lamented his poor hiring choices. The consequences were dire. Everyone involved with the arena would be executed. A dark-haired man looked apprehensive as this news was delivered amidst a scene of devastation. Someone clutched an arena pass, desperately hoping for just one more visit. He was determined to watch just one more time. The crowd buzzed with anticipation as Happy's match was announced. Chapter 3 of Happy Face. From Slave to Arena. Legend opens with a bright sky. Dark clouds gather quickly. Rain starts pouring down. Lightning flashes. A worried woman looks out a window. A loud crash of thunder echoes. A woman noticed a sudden change in the weather and hurried to bring in the laundry. She stepped outside, startled by the sound of the door, and her eyes widened in surprise. Confused, she wondered what was happening as she saw royal knights marching through the rain-soaked streets. She questioned why such a force would be present in their humble town. Soldiers marched towards a fortress in the pouring rain. A spear slammed into the ground, silencing the troops. A fierce-looking commander bellowed orders to capture a royal family murderer hiding inside, authorizing lethal force if met with resistance. Armored figures affirm their understanding of orders. A brutal fight ensues in a caged arena, one combatant quickly overpowering the other. Spectators react with disgust and annoyance at the one-sided match. One wonders if all fights are this dull, save for Happy's. The announcer excitedly declares the main event is about to begin. A man in ornate clothing addressed a crowd, asking if they remembered the serial killer from a month ago. The crowd murmured, surprised and confused, recognizing the killer in their midst. The speaker reminded them of the killer's notoriety and how he terrorized the village, earning the nickname Nocturnal Demon. Someone in the crowd wondered why the killer wasn't imprisoned and awaiting execution. A flamboyant announcer declared a certain man's arrival at the arena. He excitedly announced the first battle starring Happy Face. Happy Face, a young man with a cheerful expression, entered the arena. From the stands, a shocked spectator recognized Happy Face as a murderer. Finally, in a darkened area of the arena, someone announced the imminent arrival of the Nocturnal Demon. A man chuckled, finding his new surroundings ridiculously amusing. He gleefully realized he could live comfortably just by killing in this place. Crossing his swords, his expression turned manic, reveling in this supposed heaven. Another man suggested they move, and he stomped forward, ready for action. He contemptuously looked down at someone he considered trash. A stern-faced man with a halberd questioned who deserved punishment. A confused guard reacted with surprise. Someone observed that Lucastian's ability to extract people from prison implied royal connections. The guard, startled, uttered a surprised, "Oh!" A heavy door creaked open, revealing darkness beyond. Happy noticed a weapon placed in his hand. A manic grin spread across his face as he realized he was being sent back to fight. He gripped the weapon tightly, ready for whatever awaited. A fierce warrior kicked a terrified opponent. A concerned spectator in the arena wondered where someone was. A group of men reacted with shock and disbelief. One urged the others to look, pointing towards a newcomer. A royal knight appeared, causing confusion and speculation amongst the onlookers. The knight, facing away from the group, descended into what appeared to be an arena. He bellowed a command, "Everyone kneel." A stern-faced authority figure declares everyone present under arrest for the murder of a royal family member. Confused and panicked murmurs erupt from the crowd. One man, seemingly desperate, shoves past guards protesting his innocence. Happy, witnessing the chaos, looks stunned. He reacts with shock and alarm as the situation escalates. The king's decree echoed, "Death to all who resisted." People scrambled to kneel, terrified. A dark-haired man knelt, sweat dripping, a spilled pouch of coins near him. A stern guard glared, demanding obedience from those still standing. A young man with a cheerful expression faced a stern-looking older man. The older man questioned him, finding his amusement irritating. The young man stood defiant, a glint in his eye. He swiftly disarmed his opponent, sending the weapon flying. The young man bitterly reflected on being constantly ordered around. A man with a stern expression watched intently. A hand gripped a wooden beam tightly. Dust and debris flew as a foot stomped down hard. A dark-haired person was flung backwards, a large blade narrowly missing them. Another man, with light hair and wearing red, stopped his sword mid-swing, confusion evident in his eyes. Someone observing the scene wondered aloud what was happening. A figure braced, muscles tense, preparing to strike. With a fierce grin, the dark-haired man slammed his opponent into the ground. Everything went white, the impact radiating outward. A powerful kick sends a man flying. Spectators gasp in shock as they witness the brutal force. The attacker, a grinning young man, slams his opponent's head into the ground. The downed man, enraged, curses his attacker. A fierce warrior roared, swinging a large weapon. The warrior lunged again, his attack even more ferocious. The dark-haired young man calmly evaded the blow, seemingly predicting the warrior's movements. A warrior swings a large weapon at his opponent. It's too late to dodge the blow. Seeing an opening, the opponent prepares to strike. He seizes the opportunity and punches, sending his enemy sprawling. A powerful blow sends a man flying. Shocked, a young man watches the aftermath. He then slams his fist into the ground, creating a small crater. A dark-haired man looked shocked, realizing his opponent had survived a powerful blow. The gray-haired warrior, wielding a large weapon, braced himself against the impact, gritting his teeth. Dust and debris flew around him as he absorbed the force of the attack, digging his heels into the ground. He then used the momentum to swing his weapon fiercely, creating a whooshing sound as it cut through the air. A figure emerges from a cloud of dust. A scarred man looks up in confusion. He's violently thrown to the ground. He lands hard, the impact shaking the earth. Happy, looking monstrously strong, stares down at his fallen opponent from above. A figure lay seemingly defeated on the ground, a spear piercing the surface nearby. Happy, back turned, braced himself against a volley of arrows. He stumbled back, several arrows protruding from his body. Concerned soldiers rushed towards their fallen captain. The captain, struggling to sit up amidst the spears, cursed his predicament. Chaos erupted, leaving a nobleman stunned and questioning the unfolding events. A close-up revealed the nobleman's wide-eyed fear as he watched the scene unfold. A man with dark hair and a crazed smile lay on the ground, pierced by arrows, while another figure looked on. The unknown observer remained partially hidden, their back turned, adding to the mystery. A hand grips the edge of a wooden surface. The next chapter is titled Happy's Secret. Reset Scans is advertising their services and recruiting translators and editors. They also thank their patrons. A stylish man with dark hair stands, holding a glowing staff. A defeated warrior lay on the ground, his face contorted in pain. His opponent, standing above him, looked down with a cruel smirk. He taunted the fallen warrior, questioning his desire to endure further humiliation even in defeat. The victor's face filled the frame, his eyes burning with contempt. A warrior, seemingly poised for a killing blow, declared his intent to behead someone. A heavy-set man frantically yelled, "Stop!" The warrior, now identified as Lucastian, looked on questioningly as the heavy-set man rushed towards him, panting heavily. Lucastian stood over a downed figure, his spear planted in the ground, while the heavy-set man looked on in apparent distress. A man explained that the fighter only attacked because he mistook the situation for an arena match. He'd never been outside the arena, so he saw anyone in armor as an opponent, like a trained dog. The man then noted the fighter's unusual expression was due to a childhood disability. A close-up shows the fighter's eye, then his intense, strained smile. Finally, the fighter lunges forward with a roar, confronting the man with the spear. A man explains that Happy's facial nerves are damaged, freezing his muscles into a smile. Another man expresses disbelief, but the first confirms it's always been like that. Because of this permanent smile, everyone thought Happy was genuinely cheerful even as a baby. Abandoned by his parents, baby Happy, wearing a perpetual smile, is seen being held by a man, seemingly oblivious to his heartbreaking situation. Even while bleeding from stab wounds, a young boy laughed. He even seemed happy as his guardian lay dying before him. Because of this strange reaction, the boy, Happy, was branded a demon, misunderstood, and imprisoned. He was then seen being beaten in prison by other inmates. Happy, covered in blood, sits victorious after a brutal fight, his survival attributed to his fighting prowess. A concerned man behind bars asks what's happening. A close-up reveals a worried face, claiming to know Happy's entire life. And fearing a repeat of this violent incident, a bloodied and grinning Happy appears again, seemingly undisturbed by the chaos. A scarred and battered man, seemingly terrified, hides his true feelings behind a fixed grin. Others watch him suffer, oblivious to his inner turmoil. Focusing on him again reveals the chilling truth. His smile never falters, even as he endures agonizing pain. He lets out a strained, pained sigh. Happy's captivating presence drew crowds back to the arena again and again. A man confessed his own fascination with Happy, explaining it kept him from running. He declared his actions were repayment for the joy Happy brought him. In the final scene, Happy looks small and vulnerable. A warrior declared everyone present was doomed. He swiftly struck down another combatant. In the aftermath, Lucastian confessed and was executed along with those responsible for the arena's operation. Gallows were built directly beneath the king's balcony. The king, slightly appeased, sat brooding. Meanwhile, in a prison cell, a man sobbed, terrified of his impending execution. Overhearing that everyone else is dead, a dark-haired man shrinks back in terror. He recoils further, consumed by fear and confusion. Desperate, he begs for mercy, apologizing profusely. Another man with curly hair approaches him, concerned. A dark-haired man noticed Happy Face. Startled, he asked Happy Face when he'd arrived. Happy Face cheerfully revealed he'd been locked up with the man since yesterday. Simply observing the man's self-talk, Happy Face beamed at the realization. The dark-haired man wondered if he'd been too out of it. Someone reacted with alarm as they saw arrows protruding from the bound figure. The worried man checked if the other was all right after being hit by arrows. The bound man admitted to being slightly injured. He revealed he'd only pretended to be severely wounded. The other man was stunned by this revelation. A man explained that Happy's frozen, scared expression was due to nerve damage. He then asked a huddled, frightened young man if he was also afraid. The young man, Happy, admitted his fear with a wide, unsettling grin, stating they were about to die. Happy gasps, covering his mouth, as someone finds his incongruent expression and actions amusing. The other person, smiling brightly, asks if it's funny. Flustered, Happy frantically tries to explain his unintentional reaction. The smiling person reassures him that it's fine and common. Happy looks thoughtful, then agrees with a quiet, "Yeah." A man found solace in his companion despite the looming threat of death. Suddenly, a decree echoed through the prison. Those, with family who could vouch for them, would have a chance to prove their innocence. Confused murmurs filled the cells as prisoners reacted to the unexpected news. A proclamation promised freedom for those whose innocence was confirmed. A man reacted with shock to a grim announcement. Another man sat defeated, seemingly resigned to his fate, execution for unknown origins. An hour passed. A family rushed towards someone, crying out, "William, son and brother," in joyous reunion. A distraught family huddled together, a man questioning how they ended up in this situation. The younger brother apologized to his parents, while the youngest child, clinging to his older brother's leg, asked where they were. From behind bars, another young man observed the scene, a soft gasp escaping his lips as he recognized the family. A man looks to the side, calling out, "Happy." Happy is seen trembling, head bowed in the rain. A man places his hands on Happy's head. The man tells someone named William that this is how people without families live. A grim statement declared that slaves' lives are predetermined from birth. A young boy, eyes wide with fear, reached out to his father. The boy cried out, protesting his father's seemingly unjust execution. His father was dragged away, seemingly condemned. The boy watched helplessly as his father was taken, grief and anger etched on his face. A man urged others to stop talking and follow him. Alone now, a young man reflected on his unchanged nature since youth. He lamented his lack of agency and weakness. A reassuring voice responded, "It's okay." A young man with brown hair smiled brightly, a look of pure joy on his face. His eyes, now visible, held a glimmer of hope and excitement. He gripped the bars of a cell, blood staining his tunic, gazing out with longing. Finally free, he watched a family stroll through a sunlit courtyard, a wistful expression on his face. The innocent were released. The scarred man ordered the rest to be hanged. A man revealed there's a special case. Curious, another man asked for details. A church member, sponsored by Lord Lucastian with a hefty donation, was exempt from execution. Instead, church law demanded lifelong slavery as atonement. The information was confirmed. The king has approved. Someone asks who it is. The person only has a contestant name, Happy Face. A scarred man reacts with shock and recognition. He realizes what Lucastian meant. He explains this is his repayment to Happy for the joy he brought him. A man pondered Happy Face's nature, deeply intrigued by his urge to save him. 1 week passed. The scene shifts to a bustling slave market. A captive with dark, curly hair is startled by someone approaching his cage. Slave traders discuss a new arrival, a laughing boy locked in a cage whom they deem unsellable. They mention even the church rejected him. Suddenly, a newcomer expresses interest in buying the child. The traders are confused, claiming they have no children for sale. A chained figure points to a sadly crying child. A close-up reveals a concerned expression on another person's face. An elderly person decides to take the child. A close-up reveals a determined glint in someone's eye. The scene shifts to a promotional advertisement offering commission services for manga, manhwa, and novels. Reset Scans is actively recruiting translators and editors. Finally, special thanks are given to the Patreon supporters of Reset Scans, listed by their membership tier. Shocked, someone discovers their grandmother brought home a slave. They question the reason behind this unexpected decision. Now they realize the grandmother and the slave are alone together in the house, escalating the tension. An elderly couple discusses needing help at home due to their age and frequent clinic visits. One expresses concern about trusting a slave in their home given the dangerous times. Their companion assures them the potential helper is a kind young child. A younger blonde-haired person decides to visit home to assess the trustworthiness of the proposed helper. A kindly older woman urged a young man to wash up and change his clothes, noticing his disheveled state. Shocked by his apparent hunger, she fretted over him and offered him food. She explained he could eat freely today, but from tomorrow, he would have to work for his meals. A young man, possibly Happy, asks about fighting. An older person, likely A caretaker scolds him for such talk. The caretaker assigns him chores like washing dishes, cleaning, and gathering firewood. Happy is sent to wash up. A scarred young man cautiously stepped into a wooden tub. He slowly lowered his other foot into the warm water. Submerged, his face registered surprised delight at the sensation. Curious and amazed, he realized with a simple joy, it's warm. Happy, scarred from his past, sank into a warm bath, a first in his life. He felt his pain washing away, replaced by the unfamiliar comfort of warmth. He found warmth in the clothes he wore. The food he ate was warm. Even the house itself radiated a comforting warmth. An older woman applied herbs to the numerous stab wounds on a muscular young man's back, lamenting the cruelty of those who hurt him. She told him the herbs would heal him soon. He respectfully addressed her as master, but she insisted he call her grandmother. Surprised, he questioned, "Grandmother?" She asked what he wanted. A young boy timidly asks if he can go outside. Two men sit in quiet contemplation. The boy, now older, reaches out towards the bright sky. His eyes widen in wonder. He lifts his hand, mesmerized by the light filtering through the cracks. He stares up, bathed in the unfamiliar glow. A muscular man tells a young boy named Happy about the vastness of the world beyond the bars. He dreams of freedom, imagining the endless sky and land, now free. The young man gazes out at a dirt road leading towards a distant building, a small smile playing on his lips. He looks toward a farmhouse, seemingly contemplating his newfound freedom. An elderly woman gives the young man permission to leave, admitting she's too old to stop him. The young man, with a serious expression, tells her he's seen everything. He walks away, his bare feet padding softly on the wooden floor. A sweaty, long-haired man is seen exercising, possibly doing push-ups. A child looks up at a large man and calls him Dad. The man's face is unseen, but a woman with long, dark hair sheds tears of apparent relief. A younger man with curly hair cheerfully announces he's ready to work. An elderly person looks at him with a gentle, knowing smile. A man returned home, announcing his arrival to an old woman. Confused, he looked around. A young man in an apron cheerfully greeted him. The first man questioned the old woman about the promised child. Exasperated, the younger man insisted he was a child. A young man in an apron cheerfully shared some news with an older woman and man. The older man reacted with surprised delight, thinking it would cause a stir the next day. He then warmly welcomed the apron-clad youth, promising a good relationship. The young man smiled kindly, agreeing. He later watched the older man and woman from a window, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Happy, bathed in sunlight, beamed with pure joy. A window shattered, a rock thrown from outside. That same night, William stood by the broken window, a chilling look in his eyes. News of the arena incident quickly spread through the school. William, wrongly accused, was branded a criminal. Despite his protests, suspicion lingered that he'd enjoyed watching a royal's death. He hadn't even seen it. Consequently, William's school awards were confiscated. He sadly clutched a small memento, while another student taunted a caged royal. A younger boy watching quietly asked William about home. William's church scholarship was revoked. Facing expulsion, William was ostracized by everyone at school. Someone pleaded for another chance for William, insisting he wasn't a bad person. His father, filled with shame, begged for one more chance for his son. Someone hurried down a hallway. A young man banged on a door, urging his senior to come out and take a pass. Panicked, the young man frantically pleaded his innocence, insisting he'd never even seen a royal family member. He clutched a pass tightly, his fear evident. A shadowed figure peered cautiously through the slightly open doorway. The same figure, now visible, stared intensely into the distance, deep in thought. A dark-haired man scoffed at someone's misplaced familiarity, dismissing them as a barbarian. The scene shifted. Another man, looking shocked and uneasy, he accused someone of trying to frame him, calling them crazy. In a room with wooden floors and furniture, a cocky man confronted another, asking what their problem was. A close-up showed a hand quickly putting something away. Finally, a man appeared to throw a small object at another, his face tense with anger. A furious young man was being held back by others, accused of attempting murder. Someone smugly informed him of his expulsion. He reacted violently, spitting and cursing at the speaker. William was thrown out of the dormitory. A decision about his situation was delayed until the next day. Distraught, William sought refuge in the mountains. Weeping, lost and alone, he apologized to his parents, unsure of what to do next. A startled young man huddled in the grass as a cheerful figure approached, basket overflowing with mushrooms, asking if he was all right. The startled man, stunned, questioned how the other was alive, believing him to be dead. The cheerful figure explained he simply woke up hungry and went foraging. He offered the startled man a mushroom with a bright smile. Confused but accepting, the startled man took the offered mushroom. A panicked man realized he'd nearly eaten a poisonous mushroom. Hidden figures laughed, observing the near miss. A tense group questioned the certainty of a sighting. One insisted he'd seen a nobleman leaving a prestigious university. The group wondered about the identity of the nobleman's companion. One of the figures spotted another person, seemingly deemed acceptable. A seemingly simple man happily forages for mushrooms. Two figures watch him from above, calling him the village idiot and remarking on nobles keeping such people around. A group of menacing figures with glowing red eyes celebrate their recent acquisition of gold. The next chapter will be First Friend. Under the cloak of a shadowy night, a grinning figure with a woven basket strapped to his back gestured excitedly, seemingly pointing out a direction to his more stoic companion. He confirmed that just down that path lay the house they were seeking. The curly-haired person, their face bright with excitement, seemed to be asking the other, more stoic figure, a question tinged with a hint of mischief about venturing out alone. The other, clad in darker hues, answered with a calm reassurance, explaining their grandmother's allowance for such excursions. A young man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes offered a sly, knowing smirk, a hint of intrigue playing on his lips. He mused aloud that despite the brevity of their encounter, he could sense a certain kindness and consideration in the other person's words. A pale-skinned young man with dark, curly hair looked up with a wide, almost manic grin, seemingly relieved. After narrowly escaping death, his expression shifted though the smile remained, as he asked another with genuine concern about their well-being, and the tears he'd witnessed earlier under the dusky canopy of the forest. The green-clad young man uttered a thoughtful "Ah, I see," his words hanging in the air as his companion in blue listened intently. Two young men, seemingly commoners judging by their simple tunics, exchanged puzzled glances as a figure, presumably of noble descent given their fine attire, materialized on the dangerous mountain path. A gleaming sword held loosely at their side, a young man with dark hair seemed perplexed, glancing back as a gruff figure approached, their footsteps heavy in the tense atmosphere. He then turned his attention forward, his expression hardening as two menacing figures one masked. The other burly advanced towards him. A curious glance met a cryptic remark, leaving one young man questioning the other's words. Confusion painted the face of the green-clad youth as he watched something unexpected unfold. With a soft thud, the blue-robed figure collapsed to the ground, leaving the observer bewildered. A lone figure, clad in blue, lay prostrate on the ground, clutching a small gleaming object in his trembling hands, a whispered plea escaping his lips. A menacing group, their faces etched with grim satisfaction, closed in, their weapons glinting in the dim light, a sinister chuckle echoing through the air. With a sly grin, the man in the crimson tunic admired someone's quick thinking, the sound of clapping echoing in the air as he tested the fit of his brown gloves. A menacing figure, his face shadowed and a cruel smirk playing on his lips, held the gleaming blade close, his words a chilling promise of ownership over someone's fate. He declared his intention to leave his mark, the glint in his eyes mirroring the sharp edge of his weapon. A figure in red observed a group of commoners, seemingly uneasy and trying to explain their non-noble status. A sinister laugh echoed as a hooded figure leaned close to a wide-eyed, grinning man presenting a woven basket. The man peered into the basket, his expression shifting to one of bewilderment as he questioned its contents. A fierce blow landed squarely on the robed figure's face, sending a spray of blood into the air as the attacker, clad in green, followed through with brutal force. The robed figure crumpled to the ground, landing heavily in the grass with a dull thud. Under the cloak of a shadowy night, a group of men, armed with axes, stood over a fallen figure, their faces etched with a mixture of confusion and alarm. A chilling silence hung in the air, broken only by whispered questions of why. Later, two men, one older and grim, the other youthful and unsettlingly cheerful, continued their morbid task. The younger one's innocent query about the sudden death contrasting sharply with the macabre scene. A sinister grin spread across his face, a chilling prelude to the unfolding drama. A question hung heavy in the air, laced with suspicion. Could you little brat, be responsible for this? The accused, back turned, braced as the accuser, axe held high, loomed over him, radiating fury. A hand, clad in green, reached out, hesitantly. With a sickening thud, a sharp object found its mark, sending a spray of impact and a gasp of surprise through the air. As the dark-haired figure stumbled back, two figures lay sprawled on the grass, a chilling stillness settling over them. Confusion hung heavy in the air, marked by a series of question marks. A group, led by a stern-faced man with a dark beard and crimson attire, emerged from the shadows, their expressions a mixture of shock and suspicion. A menacing figure, clad in green robes, emerged from the shadows with a chilling grin, his presence radiating a palpable sense of dread amongst the assembled crowd armed with axes and swords. With a fierce roar, the dark-haired warrior lunged forward, his face contorted in a battle cry as his comrades surged behind him, weapons raised. With a fierce cry, the cloaked warrior in crimson swung his weapon, a blur of motion against the dusky forest as his axe-wielding companion loomed menacingly behind him. A fierce kick, laced with power, sent the green-clad warrior sprawling, his face contorted in a grimace of effort and pain as he braced for the impact. The fallen warrior's eyes widened, a flash of desperation in their depths. His hand reached out, grasping for purchase as his body hit the earth with a ferocious roar. The long-haired man swung a blunt object, striking his green-clad opponent with a brutal force that sent him tumbling. A figure in green tumbled to the ground, their face contorted in pain as another person loomed above them. Confusion flickered across the older man's face as he questioned the unexpected turn of events. Gripping a hatchet, a hooded figure with pale skin and dark, intense eyes appeared, radiating a chilling aura. A figure in green was sent sprawling through the air, an axe flying from his grasp. A scream echoed, ripping through the tense silence. As a blade flashed, crouched low, the attacker, clad in crimson, gripped his weapon, a grim satisfaction twisting his features. A nobleman's face contorted in shock and fear. In a flurry of motion, a figure in green struck down opponents with brutal force. The last man standing, wounded and terrified, could only whisper in despair. A young man, sweat beading on his brow, nervously touched his lips as a chilling thought returned amidst the tense sounds of struggle. Another figure, darker and seemingly menacing, loomed close, their eyes fixed in a disturbing gaze. A menacing figure, cloaked in crimson and radiating an ominous aura, loomed over fallen bodies, his glowing red eyes hinting at a dark past filled with Rena victories. Panic seized the group as a horrifying shriek filled the air. One man's face contorted in terror while another, his features sharp and menacing, urged them forward with a desperate cry. A blood-splattered young man with wild, dark curls offered a chilling, wide-eyed grin, a silent ellipsis hanging in the air as another figure, cloaked in somber hues, approached a fallen body in the twilight, under a starlit sky. The young man in blue, arms crossed, reflected on a recent feat of incredible strength, having single-handedly subdued a group of armed robbers. He wondered with a hint of disbelief if what he had accomplished was even possible. The dark-haired young man, sweat beading on his brow, recalled his past victory over a royal knight. Fought bare-handed, he realized with a dawning sense of unease that all his recent battles had been fought without weapons. A man's eyes widened in bewildered curiosity, a question mark hanging in the air above him. Lying amongst the dark grass, a figure noticed a discarded piece of paper and wondered if it was a wanted poster. A hand held a wanted poster, featuring crude drawings of 3 figures and a description of their crimes. The unseen holder wondered aloud if the subjects of the poster were the very people they were looking for. They then speculated that perhaps the wanted criminals had removed all the posters from the village themselves. A gasp of surprise, punctuated the sight of a wanted poster detailing the crimes of an asylum seeker, murder, theft, and kidnapping. Under the cloak of a starlit night, a young man in blue robes, clutching a crumpled piece of paper, seemed to realize a shocking truth about a group, perhaps performers, being exiles. A curly-haired young man, his eyes wide with a mix of surprise and excitement, asked a question with a curious lilt. The scene shifted to a dark-haired man, intently examining a piece of paper, his expression serious and contemplative as he explained about a powerful criminal organization spread throughout the kingdom. A kingdom's turmoil brewed as a shadowy power encroached upon the royal city, prompting a desperate king to issue a bounty on the heads of the elusive phantom troop. A sinister figure, cloaked in darkness, watched the chaos unfold from above, a grim satisfaction playing on his lips. Below, a young man with dark hair, clutching a piece of paper, seemed awestruck by the sight of the infamous phantom troop, finally witnessing their legendary presence firsthand. A young man with dark hair stared at a piece of paper, a flicker of surprise in his widened eyes as he realized the bounty was far more substantial than he'd anticipated. With a determined glint in his eyes, the young man in the dark robes clutched a piece of paper, a plan forming in his mind to secure a reward. He mused that by capturing these individuals and turning them over to the authorities, a handsome sum of money could be his. He offered to accompany the other person, acknowledging their role in the capture and ensuring they received their rightful share of the bounty. A dark-haired young man, clad in green, looked up with a curious and slightly mischievous glint in his eyes at the mention of a bounty. Across a worn wooden table, a dark-haired man gestured, seemingly arguing with the seated figure who casually examined a document, only to be met with a dismissive remark about his status preventing any reward. The standing man's eyes widened in disbelief as he exclaimed in shock. With a wide, excited grin, a young man in green assured someone that his friend could absolutely be vouched for. The friend, clad in blue, looked intense and determined as he addressed a seated figure. The seated man, wearing an orange vest, seemed to be pondering the friend claim with a thoughtful expression. The weary-looking man, clad in simple tunic and vest, delivered unsettling news despite the circumstances. There were no new leads. Leaning over a table, a dark-haired man urgently slid a document across to another, his question hanging in the air. The other man in a lighter tunic accepted the paper, a thoughtful expression settling on his face as he agreed. He trailed off, musing aloud about the implications of their agreement. A worn, folded document detailed the capture of a criminal known as the Asylum Clown, subdued and bound, the bounty claim marked with a scrawled signature. A small drawstring pouch was passed from one hand to another under the cloak of a shadowy night. Later, two figures, one in green and one in blue, stood in the town square. The green-clad one beaming as the other gestured and explained something about quietly buying and selling at this time. A mischievous grin spread across his face, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he clutched a small pouch, clearly pleased with himself. He wondered aloud what he should do with his newfound treasure. A young man, his expression thoughtful, and a hint of realization in his eyes, seemed to grasp a previously unknown truth. He then offered a future opportunity to share this newfound knowledge, promising to reveal everything he could. His face lit up with a mischievous grin, a playful glint in his eyes as he clutched the ropes in his hands. Under the night sky, a man carrying supplies followed another, who, with childlike wonder, examined a small object he held delicately between his fingers, his companion inquiring about his apparent naivety. The curious one, radiating excitement, confirmed his inexperience, captivated by the newness of everything around him. Having forged a connection during their walk and conversation, they parted ways, promising to meet again soon. Under the twilight sky, a figure in blue gestured towards a nearby building, suggesting to their companion, who carried a woven basket, that they should meet again when possible. A simple okay, agreed the one with the basket. Their paths diverged, leaving them separated on the cobblestone road. With a mischievous grin, the man in green bid farewell, promising a future reunion. A sudden call from behind made him turn. With a subtle smile and a knowing gesture, the dark-haired man hinted at something unspoken. A blank space, a beat of silence, hung heavy with anticipation. His expression shifted, a shadow of contemplation passing over his features as he looked downwards. Seemingly lost in thought, he sighed heavily, his dark hair falling over his face, as he hung his head in evident distress. The gloomy backdrop of a medieval town mirroring his somber mood. A lone figure stood before a grand assembly, bathed in the light streaming through the high windows of an ornate hall. He was seemingly presenting himself before a council, his back to the viewer, his posture suggesting a mix of respect and defiance. In a dimly lit room, a man and woman exchanged worried glances, their faces etched with concern. The man, his voice heavy with doubt, muttered about a missing person. Elsewhere, a young man in crimson, his brow bandaged, touched his injury with a wince, his expression reflecting pain and weariness, while beside him, a woman watched with a somber gaze. The imposing, bearded man in rich, patterned robes declared something, his voice likely carrying weight in the grand hall where another similarly dressed, but balder, men held a book, with a heavy heart. The dark-haired man lowered his head as the judge delivered the final verdict, a somber silence settling over the courtroom, where the figures stood anxiously before the bench. The bearded man, dressed in ornate attire, seemed to declare grimly that William, having caused trouble at the arena, had now assaulted a fellow student, and must face the consequences. A bearded man spoke, his words hinting at a grave situation involving a dangerous group terrorizing the kingdom. The younger man, dressed in a dark uniform, stared wide-eyed with a mixture of shock and confusion as a medal was pinned to his chest, a reward for bravely confronting the notorious outlaws. A woman gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as a man beside her turned with an expression of bewildered curiosity. Confusion hung heavy in the air, a silent question mark etched on every face. Then, a young man with a bandage on his head reacted with startled disbelief, his posture stiffening as if struck by an unexpected revelation. A lone figure stood before the assembled court, his youthful appearance contrasting sharply with the gravity of the situation. He was being commended for his bravery in defending the kingdom despite his young age. The king, seated on his throne high above, decreed a pardon and a second chance for the young hero. Confused, the dark-haired man in ornate crimson robes questioned the sudden turn of events. His expression hardened as he processed the implications. Turning towards two men dressed in more modest attire, with a grim set to his jaw, he declared his unsettling resolve. With a bandage across his forehead, the man's gaze hardened as a grim realization dawned on him. The parents had clearly exploited the situation for financial gain. He offered comfort, a hand on her shoulder, his expression a mix of grim resolve and worry as she, distressed and clutching her hands to her chest, absorbed some troubling news. Dabbing at a dark stain on a pristine white cloth, the dark-haired man in crimson finery frowned, his thoughts betraying a plan gone slightly awry. A woven basket sat innocently in a dimly lit room, hinting at the events to come. Unseen forces tormented someone, preventing sleep and filling the night with an unknown suffering. Curled up under a blanket on the wooden floor, the figure wrestled with their pain. Alone in the quiet room, a bloodied and battered figure, their face a mask of terror and pain, clutched desperately at a dark green cloak, the rain pouring down around them like a curtain of sorrow. Driven by relentless pain, a figure with dark, unruly hair and a manic grin strained against unseen bonds. His sweat-slicked muscles bulging with effort as he desperately sought the source of his torment. Sweating and with a manic grin, the man in green leaned over a dark woven basket, wondering if he'd found something useful inside. Emerging from the intense training of the arena, a formidable figure, his blue-toned physique radiating power, found himself oddly unsettled by the unfamiliar sensation of peace. A sinister, red-hued figure emerged from the smoky darkness, its glowing eyes fixed on the fallen forms clad in green. A young man with dark, tousled hair awoke with a wide, delighted grin. Clearly having experienced a wonderfully restful sleep, he mused that he hadn't slept so soundly since leaving the arena. A young man with dark, curly hair lay peacefully asleep, a gentle smile gracing his lips. Suddenly, he jolted awake, a look of surprise and excitement spreading across his face. As he called out to someone unseen, a question mark hung in the air as he looked up, confusion quickly replacing the initial joy. A young person, radiating joy, embraced an older woman, likely their grandmother, while a bearded man looked on. With a warm smile, clearly happy about the reunion, the youth exclaimed their happiness at seeing their grandmother again, having missed her dearly. A blonde-haired woman inquired about a recently arrived child, her curiosity evident in her bright eyes. A bearded man gestured with a knowing grin towards a nearby building, a small, cloaked figure just visible in the doorway. He confirmed the child's presence inside, his tone implying a secret shared. A young, blonde-haired individual, dressed simply, smiled warmly, holding a small, wooden bird delicately in their hands, seemingly pleased with the recent purchase from the market. They hoped this small gift would create a positive first impression and ease the newcomers' transition into the unfamiliar surroundings and community. A blonde woman's eyes widened, a silent question hanging in the air. A curly-haired figure in a green tunic beamed, a wide, almost mischievous grin spreading across their face. A young man in a green tunic watched curiously as a blonde woman, accompanied by two older individuals, gestured towards something on the ground near a small, humble farmhouse. A wooden bird rested on the sandy ground. A young blonde woman, her eyes wide with surprise, seemed to question the bird's presence. A shocked gasp escaped her lips as a sudden, startling revelation dawned on her. Her wide eyes fixed on the older man beside her, who seemed oblivious to her inner turmoil. With a mischievous grin and a wide, toothy smile, the dark-haired figure offered a playful wave, their happy energy practically radiating from the panel. A quaint farmhouse stood amidst neatly tilled fields, bathed in the warm glow of a sunny afternoon. Leaning towards the older man across the table, the younger one spoke with a mixture of exasperation and disbelief about being treated like a child. The older man, hands clasped, listened with a serious expression as the younger one confessed their fear, revealing the startling news of the older man's past as an arena fighter. The bearded man, his hands clasped thoughtfully, seemed to decide on patience, urging himself to observe a little longer. He then mused, a gentle smile playing on his lips, that while he'd only glimpsed a little of the other person, they seemed decent enough. An older man, possibly a father or mentor, gently reassured a younger, blonde individual through a window, promising them a safe haven, leaving the blonde person looking intrigued and questioning. The dark-haired young man, grinning broadly, shared a light-hearted moment with an older woman, both seemingly amused by someone visible through the window. A thoughtful narrative bubble appeared, suggesting that true happiness lies in cherishing the people important to you. The scene shifted to a blonde individual, listening intently to an older, bearded man. A pensive silence hanging in the air. An elderly man, seemingly deep in thought, made a remark about someone's exceptional work ethic. A young man, grinning widely, hefted a large barrel, inquiring where it should be placed. An older woman, gesturing with her hand, directed him to put the barrel down nearby. A younger person, perhaps a grandson, looked at an older man with a gentle, almost melancholic expression, while the older man seemed to be lost in fond memories, a small smile playing on his lips. The older man's thoughts drifted to the task at hand, seemingly finding unexpected solace in a chore that was initially postponed. He realized with a touch of wistful humor that he was perhaps enjoying this more than he had anticipated. A young man with neatly swept blonde hair seemed lost in thought, a soft sound escaping his lips. The sky stretched vast and blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds, a picture of serenity. Near a rough stone wall, an axe lay discarded beside a chopping block and a pile of logs, hinting at unfinished work. With a determined glint in her eye, the blonde-haired woman gripped the axe, muttering about her ability to handle things herself. A powerful swing cleaved the wooden two with a sharp crack, sending splinters flying. With a powerful swing, the blonde chopped wood, splinters flying. The scene shifted to another individual, who hauled buckets of water from a well, their muscles straining with the effort. A young woman with blonde hair watched a man carrying the buckets on a yoke, seemingly asking him a question. He, grinning brightly, confirmed he had completed the chores she'd given him, with a melancholic air. The blonde-haired individual declared that if everything were well, they would bear the burden. A dark-haired figure responded with a simple, yet bright and eager, yes. A figure in simple peasant clothes nudged a wooden bucket with a casual gesture. There was a long pause, the air still and quiet. Suddenly, a young man with dark, curly hair sat sprawled on the ground, a relaxed smile spreading across his face. A blonde-haired individual observed another figure, clad in green, from across a fenced area. The observer questioned why the other remained and stared so intently. The figure in green, face now alight with an unnervingly wide grin, explained that they were observing and learning, implying they would soon be undertaking a similar task. A blonde-haired individual, seemingly deep in thought, considered their own posture while gripping a long-handled tool. A voice then instructed someone to observe and learn, the command punctuated by the tightening grip on the tool's shaft. With a determined glint in his eyes, the blond young man stretched, preparing for a task. He swung the axe down with a grunt, splitting the log with a resounding crack. Something sharp whistled through the air, narrowly missing its target. A young woman, her brow furrowed in concentration, swung an axe, splitting wood outside a simple cottage. A dark-haired figure watched her from close by, their presence unnoticed yet intense. A blonde-haired person chopped wood as a dark-haired figure watched in silence. Suddenly, the blonde one turned, their face alight with realization, and reached out a hand as if explaining a crucial detail about starting a fire. With a determined grunt, the blonde-haired figure raised a heavy mallet high above their head, their face flushed with effort. Then, with a powerful swing, the mallet crashed down, splitting the wood beneath with a resounding crack. A blonde-haired woman beamed, her eyes sparkling with uncontainable joy. Mirroring her delight, a dark-haired person, possibly a young man, grinned broadly, their face lit up with matching enthusiasm, with a mischievous glint in her eye. The blonde woman swung the axe, her question echoing in the air as a startled man scrambled back in apparent awe. From his vantage point, the older man observed two younger figures busily chopping wood in the yard below. The scene shifted, leaving only a thought bubble hinting at an unspoken truth. Lost in contemplation, the bearded man leaned against a wooden railing, his gaze distant and thoughtful. An elderly woman, seemingly weary, gestured dismissively towards a field, implying that further work was unnecessary. A younger woman, chopping wood nearby, looked up in surprise, questioning if the existing supply was truly sufficient. A figure in a long skirt gestured towards a huge pile of chopped wood, seemingly explaining that someone named Happy had done all the work. The blonde-haired individual, eyes wide with surprise, turned their head towards the impressive woodpile, utterly baffled. Another figure, wielding an axe, continued chopping wood in the background, apparently oblivious to the shocked reaction. He, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, questioned the blonde, seemingly referencing something they had recently discussed. About learning by observation, she, wide-eyed and slightly perplexed, seemed to silently question his implication. A figure diligently chopped wood, their green tunic swirling with the effort. A wide, mischievous grin spread across another's face as they watched the woodcutter, clearly enjoying the scene. The observer cheerfully confessed to needing a lesson in proper wood chopping technique, their eyes sparkling with amusement. The blonde-haired person with a wide-eyed, exasperated expression seemed to be complaining about an unseen injury, implying it was to be expected given the circumstances. A dark-haired individual, grinning mischievously and gesturing with a finger to their cheek, retorted with playful sarcasm about a lack of prior warning regarding the injury. A wide-eyed, blonde-haired person seemed to be accusing someone, their words laced with disbelief and frustration. Below them, figures busied themselves around a quaint house, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding. An older person, wearing a cap, offered comforting words and a gentle smile to a presumably younger individual. The blonde-haired individual's face then morphed into an expression of shocked realization. Crying out in anguish, the blonde-haired youth looked away, seemingly troubled, as a departing figure in green thanked him and another person in reddish attire gently touched the green-clad figure's arm. He softly scoffed under his breath, his earlier discomfort lingering. A serene sunset painted the sky in warm hues. A rustic room, filled with simple furniture and the glow of late afternoon light, hinted at a quiet life. Steam curled from a hidden source in a wooden structure, suggesting a bath being prepared. A single candle flickered, casting a soft glow on a neatly folded pile of cloth, perhaps clothing or linens, creating an atmosphere of peaceful solitude. Relaxing in a steaming bath, the blonde-haired woman mused that having another person around the house might actually be a good thing after The blonde woman luxuriated in a steaming bath, a thoughtful expression softening her features as she seemed to relish the peace of her home. With a satisfied sigh and a soft all done, a figure retreated from view, leaving only a fleeting impression through a multi-pane window. A moment later, a blonde head popped into the frame, a single question mark hovering above them. Curiosity piqued by the previous occupant's hasty departure, a lone figure with the pack slung over their shoulder walked away from a farm as the sun began to set, watched by a blonde woman from a window. Suddenly, her expression shifted from wistful to shocked, a silent question forming on her lips. Where could he be going at this late hour? The blonde woman, dressed in a long pale gown, recoiled in shock, her question echoing through the room. The older woman, her face etched with confusion, responded with a disbelieving question of her own. As a bearded man watched the exchange with a concerned frown, the elegant, silver-haired woman trailed off, a wistful expression clouding her features. As she recalled the instructions she'd given, the older man, stroking his beard thoughtfully, remarked that the older woman seemed to have been out late again last night. She responded with a surprised and slightly anxious, "Oh, really? Anxious, oh, really?" The blonde-haired individual, seemingly startled and suspicious, questioned someone's unexpected departure at such a late hour. A figure clad in green clutched a small, clinking pouch, their fingers tightening around it. A fist, belonging to someone with dark hair, lightly knocked on a wooden door. A young man, likely William judging by the speech bubble, beamed with unrestrained joy, a mischievous glint in his eyes. A figure in green peered cautiously around a wooden door, catching a glimpse of someone inside. Startled, the person inside looked up, a question forming in their wide eyes and a mischievous grin spreading across their face. A small child, clutching a dark wooden door handle, peered up with wide, innocent eyes and called out inquisitively. A figure with a mischievous grin and a sack slung over his shoulder appeared in the doorway, promising a surprise while urging a little girl to wait inside, her guardian playfully assuring her of a quick return. Startled, the dark-haired woman looked up with wide eyes, a question evident in her surprised expression as she seemed to ask where someone was going. With a sly glance and a finger to his lips, the man leaned in, sharing a secret about a trip to the library with the wide-eyed, eager child. The dark-haired man leaned in, a playful glint in his eyes, as he teased the small child with a curious question. The child, wide-eyed and a little flushed, brought a hand to her mouth, whispering a soft affirmation. The young girl, peeking from a doorway, seemed to urge the travelers to be quiet as they approached. One of the travelers, carrying a woven basket, grinned broadly at the girl's whispered warning. He cheerfully assured her they would be careful. With a mischievous grin, the curly-haired youth in green announced his unexpected arrival, catching his dark-haired companion pleasantly off guard. A mischievous grin spread across the first person's face as they posed a seemingly innocent question. A sly smirk touched the other's lips as they confirmed with a knowing look. With a sly grin, the dark-haired young man assured his companion, carrying a sack over his shoulder, that he was indebted to him and anything would be fine. A curious "huh?" escaped the other one's lips in response. With a sly smile, the dark-haired man suggested they hurry along, sensing his curly-haired companion's eagerness to reach the bustling marketplace. A young man, beaming with uncontainable glee, clutched a wanted poster, his excitement palpable. A young man's eyes widened in surprise, a question mark hanging unspoken above his head. He wondered aloud if the papers in his hands were indeed wanted posters. He held one up, the stark characters announcing a warrant for someone's arrest. A young man, dressed in simple earth-tone clothes, turned to his companion, a jovial figure, in a vibrant green tunic, with a woven basket slung over his shoulder. The green-clad man offered a small, folded piece of parchment with a bright, eager grin, while explaining something about wanting to brawl with certain troublesome types, but being hindered by his illiteracy. He then asked his more plainly dressed friend for assistance, seemingly lost and unsure of his location. A dark-haired individual expressed surprise at the curly-haired one's declared intention to become a bounty hunter. Beaming, the curly-haired character enthusiastically offered to share the earnings, even promising half of his previous bounty to his companion. Shaking a small pouch and a wanted poster, William's gaze held a mixture of gratitude and fascination. For Happy, he found himself captivated by a unique charm in Happy's fighting style. Happy, driven by a need to quell a nightly torment, sought an outlet through sanctioned combat. A wide, almost gleeful grin spread across Happy's face. Realizing this was his legitimate path to fight, under the cloak of night, two figures met, their clandestine partnership forged in the pursuit of bounty. Later, amidst crates and the bustle of a market, one questioned their chances of success that day. With renewed determination, the other declared they had spent the night gathering information and were ready to pursue their target. A young man in a blue tunic cheerfully announced his intention to collect the newly posted wanted posters, while another, burdened with a large woven basket, turned to look. Meanwhile, a third man, seemingly bored and weary, dozed at a nearby table. A weary-looking man, seated at a rough-hewn table, questioned a younger man, seemingly about to leave, with a hint of suspicion in his voice. The younger man, dressed in a dark, subtly elegant tunic, looked intensely at the speaker, his expression a mixture of determination and defiance, while a small child, perched nearby in a bright yellow outfit, watched the exchange with wide, curious eyes. A figure turned their back, seemingly ignoring a desperate plea to stop neglecting them for another friend. Overcome with emotion, a smaller figure dramatically wailed, heartbroken by the perceived betrayal. Then, a third person announced their departure, perhaps seeking solace or escape from the charged scene. A woman, dressed in simple dark clothing, appeared troubled as she let out a soft gasp, her gaze averted. The dark-haired man beside her, his features etched with a contemplative seriousness, seemed to weigh his words before speaking, a thoughtful silence hanging in the air between them. A small folded paper bird sat silently on a table beside a spoon, seemingly overlooked. Elsewhere, a blonde figure knelt amidst wooden crates, searching through their contents with a quiet intensity. A soft murmur of surprise escaped their lips as they uncovered something within. A spilled bag revealed a multitude of colorful pills, scattered across the wooden floor. A blonde-haired individual, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination, clutched a handful of the pills, contemplating a drastic course of action. A treasure chest, filled with glittering coins and pouches, lay open in a dimly lit cave. A knight, clad in steel armor and carrying a shield, stood guard, his expression grim and resolute. A lone figure stood amidst the carnage of a battlefield, fallen soldiers scattered around him. The scene shifted, focusing on a close-up of a grizzled warrior, his face etched with grim determination as if recalling a crucial moment. He realized a chilling truth amidst the chaos, his expression hardening with the weight of a new, unwelcome understanding. The grizzled, armored warrior observed a subtle shift in the kingdom's atmosphere, noting how soldiers who once disregarded him now seemed wary. A hulking, armored figure, their face obscured by a metal mask, loomed over someone, presenting a worn, sketched portrait of a similarly armored warrior, marked with ominous Korean words hinting at murder. With wide, curious eyes, the dark-haired young man in green peered intently at the old, worn piece of parchment he held, a soft murmur escaping his lips, deep within a shadowy forest. A man in green excitedly announced a discovery, waving a piece of paper, while his companion in blue gasped in astonishment, their eyes wide with surprise, as a figure clad in imposing armor loomed large before them.